Ethan had never seen a ship like this before. The Sarathi flagship towered above the space station, its dark metal surface shimmering with strange lights. Humans had heard of the Sarathi for years, but no one really knew them. Their ships were enormous, alive in a way that seemed almost breathing, and their technology was far beyond anything humans had built. Ethan, a young engineer from Earth, felt both nervous and excited. This was his first mission with the aliens, and he wanted to prove himself. He stepped onto the ship, his boots clanging softly on the smooth floor. Around him, the crew moved silently, efficient and graceful. They didn't greet him or even look at him. He noticed their eyes, sharp and observing, following his every step. "Welcome, human," a voice said. Ethan turned quickly to see her. Queen Lirana, the ruler of the Sarathi, stood there. She was taller than any human. Her skin a soft, pale blue that glowed faintly under the lights. Her eyes were deep and dark. And for a moment, Ethan felt like she was looking right into his mind. She did not smile. She barely nodded. "Thank you, Your Majesty," Ethan said, bowing slightly. She said nothing more and turned away. Her presence was commanding. The Sarathi guards moved around her, keeping their distance. But their eyes never left Ethan. He tried to shake off the unease and followed the others to the briefing room. Inside, humans and Sarathi gathered. Ethan noticed that Lirana did not sit at the table. She remained standing, silent, watching the stars outside the window. The officers spoke quickly, giving orders and explaining missions. But she barely moved. When the briefing ended, she left without saying a word. Ethan couldn't understand it. He had heard stories of alien leaders, but this was different. She seemed almost cold. For the next few days, he tried to do his work quietly, helping repair engines, monitoring the ship systems, and keeping out of the way. Every time he saw Lirana, she looked away. She did not speak to him or even glance at him. One evening, while checking the maintenance tunnels, he overheard some crew members talking quietly. "She acts strange around him," one said. "The Queen never does this with anyone else. Maybe he angered her somehow," another whispered. "Humans are unpredictable." Ethan froze. Angered her? How could he? He barely spoke to her. He decided to confront it. That night, after the ship quieted down, he walked to the observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly before him, and the silence made him feel both small and brave. He saw her there, standing alone, looking out at the distant lights. His heart beat fast. "Your Majesty," he said carefully. "May I speak with you?" She turned slowly, her expression unreadable. For a moment, he thought she would ignore him, but then she nodded slightly. "I wanted to ask," Ethan began. "Why do you avoid me? I mean, I don't understand. Did I do something wrong?" Her eyes widened slightly, and she took a step back. Her lips parted, as if she wanted to say something, but hesitated. Then she spoke, in a soft, almost trembling voice. "To avoid falling in love with you," she said. Ethan blinked. He could hardly believe what he had heard. Did she mean it? Was this some kind of joke? But her eyes did not smile. They were serious, filled with a strange mixture of fear and longing. I don't understand," he said quietly. "Why would that be a problem?" She shook her head slowly. "I am the Queen. My people, my duties. They leave no space for personal feelings. If I allow myself to care for someone, it could bring chaos to my world, and to yours. I cannot risk it." Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had never expected to hear this from an alien queen, much less from her about him. "But I mean, I am just an engineer. I don't want to bring chaos. I only want to help." She studied him for a long time. Her gaze was intense, as if she were reading every thought he had. "It is not that simple," she said finally. "Even small feelings can grow. I sensed something when you first arrived. Something strong. It pulled at me, in ways I cannot ignore. That is why I must stay distant." Ethan swallowed. He wanted to argue, to tell her he did not care about her status or her rules. But looking at her, standing so tall and so regal, he realized he could not. He felt respect, awe, and something else he could not name. He nodded slowly. "I understand," he said softly. "I will respect your wishes. I promise." She seemed to relax slightly, though her eyes remained guarded. "Good," she said. Then, she turned back to the stars. For the next few days, Ethan tried to keep his distance, as she had asked. But it was difficult. He found himself thinking of her constantly, remembering the way her voice had sounded, the way her eyes had looked when she spoke. Even when repairing engines or monitoring ship systems, her presence lingered in his mind. One evening, an emergency alert sounded. The ship's engines had a malfunction, and the reactor room was filling with smoke. Ethan ran as fast as he could. When he arrived, he found several crew members struggling to contain the leak. Without thinking, he jumped into the thick smoke, overriding controls and stabilizing the reactor. When it was over, he stumbled out, coughing, and saw her standing nearby. Her face was pale, and for a moment, he thought she would scold him for risking himself. But instead, she came closer. "You are reckless, human," she said softly, almost laughing. "Yet, I cannot fault you. You saved lives today." Ethan smiled weakly. "I just did what I could." She nodded, her eyes lingering on him. For the first time, she did not look away. "You are different from what I expected," she said. "Different how?" he asked, curious. "You care," she said simply. "Not for power, not for glory. You care for others. That is rare among humans, or among many beings I have met." Ethan felt a blush rise to his cheeks. He did not know what to say. He had never imagined the Queen would compliment him, much less notice something so personal. From that moment, things began to change subtly. Lyrana no longer avoided him entirely. She still maintained her distance in public, but in quiet moments, she would allow him near, speaking softly about the ship, the stars, or his work. They never discussed feelings, never admitted the pull they felt for each other, but a new understanding grew. Ethan worked harder than ever, eager to impress not just the crew, but the Queen herself. And she, in turn, observed him carefully, noting his dedication, his courage, and his kind heart. It was dangerous to feel this way, yet neither of them could deny the growing connection. One night, Ethan stood at the observation deck again, watching the stars. She appeared silently behind him. He did not startle. Instead, he turned and smiled slightly. "You are quiet tonight," he said. "I am thinking," she replied. "Thinking about you, human." Ethan froze. His heart beat fast. She had never said anything like that before. He searched her eyes for meaning. I do not want to cause you trouble," he said carefully. "You do not," she said. "But even so, I must guard myself. Feelings are dangerous for someone like me." Ethan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I will respect you. Always," he said. For a long time, they stood in silence, side by side, watching the stars. Neither spoke, yet the quiet was filled with something unspoken, something strong and undeniable. Ethan realized that this mission was not only about repairing engines or learning alien technology. It was about understanding a world so different from his own, and perhaps, in some small way, touching a heart he never expected to reach. And Lyrana, the Queen who had vowed to avoid love, felt the impossible tug of emotion she could neither deny nor act upon. The human beside her, simple yet brave, had begun to leave a mark on her soul she could not ignore. The ship sailed silently through the endless stars, carrying them both into a future uncertain, yet filled with possibilities neither of them had imagined. Days passed, on the Scifi flagship, and Ethan tried to focus on his work. The ship was enormous, with corridors that twisted like the roots of a giant tree. The engines hummed constantly, and the control panels glowed with lights he had never seen before. He spent hours studying them, trying to understand how the Scifi technology worked. He wanted to be useful, not just someone the Queen noticed. Yet, no matter how busy he kept himself, he could not stop thinking about Lorana. She appeared in his thoughts during every quiet moment, her voice, her eyes, and the soft way she spoke echoing in his mind. It was strange for him. Humans were supposed to be adaptable, but he had never felt this pull toward anyone, let alone an alien queen. Lorana, for her part, struggled as well. She was careful not to let anyone notice how often she thought of him. Her duties were heavy. She met with her council daily, reviewed reports about ships and colonies, and planned strategies for their empire. Still, her mind drifted to Ethan during brief moments alone. She did not want to admit it, but his presence brought a warmth she had not felt in centuries. One evening, the ship experienced a small but sudden turbulence as it passed through a dense asteroid field. Alarms rang, and lights flickered. Ethan was in the maintenance tunnels, repairing a damaged engine pipe. Sparks flew as he worked, and the smell of hot metal filled the air. Suddenly, he heard someone call his name. "Ethan, are you all right?" He looked up to see Lorana standing at the entrance to the tunnel. Her blue skin glowed faintly in the dim light, and her hair shimmered like silver threads. She moved quickly but gracefully, ignoring the sparks that danced around the broken pipe. "I'm fine," Ethan said. "Just a minor leak. I can handle it." "You should not be alone here," she said firmly. "It is dangerous. Even a human engineer can be seriously hurt in a situation like this." Ethan smiled. "I am used to danger. It comes with the job." She shook her head, her expression softening. "It does not matter. I will not allow harm to come to you, Ethan." He froze at the seriousness in her voice. She had never spoken to him like this before. Usually, she was polite, but distant. Now, her concern was plain and unguarded. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I appreciate it." For a moment, they stood there, the hum of the ship and the crackle of sparks filling the silence. Neither moved closer, yet both felt the invisible pull between them. The next few days were filled with quiet tension. Ethan noticed subtle changes in Lorana's behavior. She allowed him to accompany her during inspections of the ship, asking him questions about human life and customs. Her curiosity was gentle, almost shy, as if she feared overstepping boundaries. "You humans have something I do not understand," she said one day, looking at the small flowers he had brought from Earth. "You cherish small things. You see beauty in simple life. My people, we focus on duty, power, survival. We forget these small joys." Ethan nodded. "It is easy to forget when life is complicated. But simple things remind us what we are fighting for." Summary. 2000. Lorana looked at him for a long moment. "Perhaps you are right." They began to meet secretly at night in quiet corners of the ship. In the observation deck, where stars stretched endlessly across the sky, they shared stories. Ethan told her about Earth, its oceans, mountains, and crowded cities. He spoke of simple human life, of laughter and mistakes, of family and friends. Lorana listened, fascinated. She told him of her world, of how the Scifi were born with purpose, trained from birth to lead and obey, to think of the empire above themselves. She had known loneliness her entire life. Leaders were not allowed personal connections, friendships were rare, love forbidden. Ethan's presence made her question everything. "You make me feel something dangerous," she said one night. "Something I should not feel. And yet, I cannot stop thinking of you." Ethan's heart pounded. "I feel the same way, Lirana. But I will not force anything. I only want to be near you. To understand you. I could. 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 I could." She looked down, her hands clasped in front of her. "That is dangerous, human. Dangerous for both of us. I must guard myself." "But you don't have to guard yourself completely," he said gently. "We can be careful. No one has to know. We can just be." She studied him, the conflict clear in her eyes. "I do not know if I can." Ethan reached out, but stopped himself before touching her. Over time, a routine developed. By day, they performed their duties. Lirana held meetings with her council, and Ethan worked in the engines and labs. By night, they found moments together. The quiet hours became precious. They shared small meals, talked about stars and planets, and sometimes simply sat in silence, feeling the presence of another being who understood them. The Sarathi guards began to notice. A few whispered among themselves but did not intervene. They respected the queen, and even they sensed the danger and uniqueness of the bond forming between her and the human. One day, the ship received a transmission from a distant sector. The message was urgent. A hostile fleet, the Draxel, was moving toward Sarathi space. They were merciless raiders, known for destroying worlds and enslaving populations. The Sarathi Council convened immediately. "You will need to command the fleet," said the chief advisor to Lirana. "The Draxel cannot be allowed to reach our colonies." Lirana nodded, her expression steady. She looked at Ethan briefly before turning back to the council. "We will prepare. All units must be ready for battle." Ethan watched her. She was composed, confident, and yet he saw the faint tremor in her hands. Fear, worry, and something deeper. He wanted to help, but there was little he could do beyond his engineering work. Still, he made sure all the engine systems were reinforced, running simulations to ensure maximum efficiency. That night, he found her again in the observation deck. The stars stretched like silver threads across the dark sky. She was silent, staring outward. "They are coming," Ethan said softly. "I know," she replied. "And yet, I worry more for you than for the fleet." He looked at her in surprise. "For me?" She nodded. "You have a courage that is rare. You are small in stature, human, yet your heart is strong. That is dangerous to me, for I feel something for you that I should not." Ethan stepped closer. "Lirana, whatever happens, we face it together. I will not leave you." She looked at him, her eyes filled with conflict. "Together? Even if it brings disaster? I cannot allow my feelings to endanger my people or yours." "I do not care about danger," he said simply. "I care about you." She shook her head, torn between duty and emotion. "It is forbidden. I cannot risk my empire, yet my heart does not obey." The next day, the ship passed through a region of space with high radiation. The shields were weak, and minor systems failed. Ethan worked tirelessly, crawling through damaged corridors, fixing power conduits. Lirana appeared without warning, moving among the crew with him. She assisted where she could, but mostly she observed, her presence reassuring and terrifying at once. "You should rest," Ethan said, wiping sweat from his brow. "I cannot," she replied. "I cannot leave you to work alone. You are reckless. Yet I cannot stop watching over you." The connection between them deepened, subtle but undeniable. Neither admitted it fully, But every glance, every word, and every shared moment strengthened their bond. Even the distance of space and the rules of the Sarathi could not prevent it. As the days passed, the Draxel fleet drew closer. The tension aboard the ship grew. The council demanded strategy meetings, simulations, and patrols. Yet Ethan and Lyrana found themselves stealing quiet moments whenever possible. Each encounter was dangerous, yet each was cherished. One evening, after another long day, Ethan and Lyrana met at the observation deck. The stars were bright, reflecting in their eyes. "You should not let yourself feel this," Lyrana said softly. "I cannot stop," Ethan admitted. "Even if it is dangerous, I want to be near you. I want to understand you." She looked at him, her gaze intense. "And I cannot stop either. You awaken something in me that I cannot ignore." They stood together, silent, watching the stars, knowing that the coming war would test them in ways they had never imagined. Yet in that moment, they were simply two beings. One human, one alien queen, connected by a fragile thread of trust and feeling. And in the vastness of space, that thread would prove stronger than either could imagine. The days grew tense aboard the Sarathi flagship. The distant signal of the Draxel fleet had become stronger, and every sensor reading brought warnings. Lyrana spent her time in the command room, planning strategies, issuing orders, and checking every detail of the ship. She moved with confidence, yet Ethan noticed the strain behind her calm expression. She did not allow herself to show weakness, but he could sense it. Ethan worked tirelessly in the engine rooms, monitoring power levels, repairing systems, and ensuring that the ship could handle any attack. He moved through the corridors with determination, aware that every decision mattered. Yet, even with the pressure of the impending threat, he could not forget Lyrana. Her presence lingered in his mind, a quiet pull that made him anxious and alive at the same time. One evening, after a long day of repairs, Ethan found Lyrana standing alone in the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly, glittering like diamonds across the dark sky. She was still and silent, as if waiting for something he could not see. "Your Majesty," Ethan said softly, "you should rest. You have been working tirelessly." She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Rest is a luxury I cannot afford, human. The Draxel fleet approaches, and my people depend on me. Yet, I think of little else but you." Ethan froze. Her words were soft, almost a whisper, but they struck him with a force he did not expect. "You think of me?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Yes," she admitted, "and that is the danger. I must guard my heart. I must guard myself from what I feel for you. And yet, I cannot stop." He stepped closer, careful not to break the invisible barrier between them. "I feel the same. I try to focus on the ship, on my duties, but I cannot forget you, Lyrana. I do not want to cause trouble. Yet, I care for you deeply." For a moment, she seemed to falter, the tension in her shoulders loosening. "It is dangerous for both of us," she said. "If anyone discovered this, it could be disastrous. And yet, I feel it anyway." Ethan nodded. "We will be careful. We can keep this hidden. No one needs to know." She studied him, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke quietly, almost to herself. "Your presence awakens something in me that I have not felt in centuries, something I cannot ignore." That night, they found themselves together more often. They shared small meals, talked about distant worlds, and sometimes simply sat in silence, watching the stars. Each word, each glance, deepened the bond between them, a bond that neither wanted to acknowledge fully, yet neither could deny. The ship's alarms went off suddenly, cutting through the quiet. The Draxel fleet had arrived, and their ships surrounded the flagship. Ethan ran to the control room, following the orders of the Sarathi officers. The Draxel were ruthless, firing energy weapons that shook the flagship, sending sparks and smoke through the corridors. Lyrana stood at the command podium, issuing orders calmly, but Ethan saw the worry in her eyes. "All units, prepare for engagement," she called. "Divert all power to shields and engines. We will not fall without a fight." Ethan worked with the engineering crew, stabilizing the engines, rerouting power, and repairing damaged conduits as explosions shook the ship. Sparks flew around him, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. He felt a surge of adrenaline and fear, yet he could not think of anything else but keeping the ship safe. In the midst of the chaos, Lyrana appeared in the engineering bay. Her presence was commanding, yet Ethan noticed the faint tremble in her hands. She approached him, her voice calm but urgent. "Ethan, you must focus. The engines must not fail. Lives depend on us." "I know," he said, determination in his voice. "We will keep the ship running." Together, they worked side by side. Lyrana's hands moved with precision, overriding damaged systems, while Ethan repaired conduits and monitored power fluctuations. Despite the danger, he felt a strange sense of comfort in her presence. She was strong, fearless, and yet human in the ways that mattered. As the battle continued, a group of Draxial boarding pods breached the outer hull. Soldiers poured into the corridors, weapons raised, ready to strike. Ethan froze, realizing the gravity of the situation. Lyrana placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch firm and grounding. "Stay close," she said. "Do not let them separate us." Ethan followed her as they moved through the ship, avoiding the intruders and helping crew members to safety. The Draxel were relentless, but Lyrana's command and Ethan's skill kept the situation under control. He saw her unleash small bursts of energy, a power he had not known she possessed. Each strike was precise, each movement calculated, yet he sensed the emotion behind them, a mix of fear, determination, and something deeper. They reached the command room just as the main hull doors were breached. Lyrana placed herself between Ethan and the incoming Draxel soldiers. "You will not harm him," she said, her voice sharp and commanding. Energy surged from her hands, throwing the intruders back. The hall shook with the force of her power, and the crew watched in awe. Ethan stared at her, realizing the full extent of her abilities. She was not just a queen. She was a force of nature, capable of destruction and protection in equal measure. Yet even as she fought, he saw the strain in her eyes, the effort it took to maintain control. "You are extraordinary," he said, his voice full of awe. "I have never seen anything like this." Lyrana looked at him, her expression softening for a moment. "And you are not afraid. You face danger without hesitation, human. That is rare." They moved together through the corridors, clearing paths and guiding the crew. Each encounter brought them closer, their trust in each other growing with every step. Ethan realized that in the midst of chaos, he had never felt more alive. After hours of battle, the Draxel forces began to retreat. The flagship had sustained damage, but the crew and the queen were safe. Lyrana stood in the command room, her chest heaving slightly from exertion, yet her eyes sought Ethan. "You fought well," she said quietly. I'm glad you were here." Ethan smiled, exhausted but relieved. "I could not have done it without you." "You are incredible, Lyrana. Not just as a queen, but as someone I care for." Her eyes softened, and for the first time, she allowed herself to show a small smile. "And I care for you, Ethan. Despite everything. Despite the rules. Despite the danger." He reached out, taking her hand gently. She did not pull away. "Then we face the future together," he said. "Yes," she whispered. "Together." The next few days were quieter, though the threat of the Draxel remained. The ship required repairs, and the crew worked tirelessly to restore systems. Ethan continued his engineering duties, but he found moments to be near Lyrana whenever possible. Each time they met, the bond between them grew stronger, built on trust, courage, and shared experiences in the face of danger. Lyrana began to show subtle signs of relaxation when Ethan was around. She allowed small gestures, a brief touch on the arm, a quiet conversation in the observation deck, a smile that lingered longer than necessary. These moments were dangerous, yet they were also precious, a fragile connection in a world filled with rules and threats. One night, they sat together in the observation deck, watching the stars stretch across the endless darkness. Ethan turned to her, his voice soft. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like? To live without these rules? To live freely, without fear of judgment or duty?" Lyrana looked at him, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "I have wondered," she said. "More often than I admit. You make me question everything I thought I knew. You make me feel alive in a way I have not felt in centuries." Ethan reached out, brushing a strand of her hair from her face. "Then let us hold on to this, however we can. Let us find moments, even if they are small, to be ourselves." She nodded, her expression softening. "I want that, more than anything. But we must be careful. The Draxel are still out there, and my people expect me to lead without distraction." "I understand," he said. "But even in danger, we can find strength together. We can face whatever comes." As they sat in silence, watching the stars, both of them understood the truth. The bond they shared was fragile, forbidden, and dangerous, but it was real. It was a connection that went beyond species, beyond rules, beyond duty. It was trust, respect, and something deeper, something that neither could deny. And in the darkness of space, aboard a ship carrying the fate of an empire and the lives of thousands, a human and an alien queen began to discover that even in the harshest circumstances, the heart could find a way to connect.